You see all those TV news personalities, and have you ever wondered, like, are they humans? Do they have feelings too? Well, they do. And on today's episode, we have TV personality, media personality, Blaine Stewart. I actually know Blaine. I've worked with him in the past. And we have a conversation about a lot of different things: how to storytell, news, journalism, sports, hair. Obviously, I have amazing hair. You'll see what type of hair he has in just a moment. But I like this conversation with Blaine because it kind of just happened by me just reaching out. You guys know I'm a big fan of just reaching out to people. And I just said, hey, Blaine, do you want to be on my show? We had a great conversation. We learned a lot about him. You guys will learn a lot about some techniques on how to storytell, how to learn, apprenticeships, etc., and what exactly goes on in a newsroom. Blaine Stewart, the man, Blaine Stewart, the man, the myth, and not the legend, because that's me, but here is media personality Blaine Stewart. Roll it. I want you to close your eyes for a couple of seconds and think back to, I believe, sometime in late January, early February of 2010. I was with you when the Saints finally won the Super Bowl.
Yes, that's one of my favorite memories of all time.
And it was with me. And
it was with you.
We haven't had many memories in general, but the best day of your life was one of those, was that moment. So what was like growing up in that kind of area to finally see the Saints not only win, but the huge story behind it after Katrina and everything? Like, tell me a little bit about like kind of that night and what had been building up to that.
I mean, in New Orleans, when I was a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, the Saints are the only team we have. We didn't have pro basketball yet. We didn't even have a minor league baseball team until almost, 96, 97. So you lived and breathed football. And the problem was our football team was horrible. I remember as a little kid, we would win 3-4 games a season. We were the Cleveland Browns of the 80s, it felt like. And then, we started getting decent. We won some games, but this was the first time, and at the time I was in my mid-30s, I guess. That was the first time as a Saints fan where I felt like we were a real legitimate football team, which was cool as a football fan. But you're right. On the heels of Katrina and the fact that the city was in shambles and, people had lost everything, that was kind of one thing that united everybody. And I remember sitting on your couch that night, right after they finally were able to come back, and we won. And I was crying. I was crying on your couch, and it was got to be top 3 best nights of my life, because it meant so much. If you're a Patriots fan, I'm not dissing Tom Brady or people like that, but you're kind of used to winning. And so while a win is still really amazing, you don't know what it's like until it's the first one you've ever had.
It's kind of like LeBron in Cleveland winning that first game. I don't know if you like basketball, but
yes, no, it's exactly what it is. And Cleveland and New Orleans have a lot of similarities where at the time we were kind of down. We didn't have much to cling on to, and that was the one thing that brought us all together.
Yeah, I remember paper bags over the heads. People would call them the ain'ts.
Yeah.
Right. One of my favorite kind of sports stories is around, I think it was the first game back in New Orleans after the Superdome had closed or had allowed all those people in it or whatever it was. And then they opened up, they played the Falcons, and there was the punt that was blocked by Gleason.
Yeah, Steve Gleason.
Now, have you watched Gleason, the documentary? You know what's going on with him now? He has ALS and everything?
Yeah. My cousin is one of his nurses that travels with him.
So I love a good documentary, and this is a super sad story. It's a guy who made this play, like I just talked about, in one of the biggest plays probably in New Orleans Saints history. Just the emotions and everything around it. And now he has ALS, and he documents the process with there. What I'm getting at, though, is kind of documenting processes and storytelling around something. As someone who's a media personality and has been for at least 3 days, or however many years you've been doing it, at least 2 decades now? How many?
21 years.
21 years. Like, storytelling is so important. Most people suck at it. Like, when you're teaching someone or you're talking to maybe an intern or someone that's coming in thinking about getting a job, how do you explain to them kind of storytelling 101?
For me, the first rule is just keep it simple. because people will respond to a good story that is told in a plain way as opposed to a good story that gets convoluted. Um, I always just try to strip it down to the basics. What's the common theme here? What's the thing you can take away from it? Maybe that's more than one thing, but build your story around that. It's the lessons from the people you're interviewing. That's what makes the story. You're just there to be the person who sews it all together and weaves it in and out with as few words as possible.
It's good stuff. Where'd you go to school?
I went to the University of New Orleans for 1.5 semesters.
1.5 semesters.
Yeah, I dropped out midway through the second semester because I got a full-time job at a TV station. So I grew up in New Orleans. That's TV market was at the time 42, which it's a scale of 1 to like 200 something. The smaller the number, the bigger the city. So New York's number 1. So we were a pretty good sized television market. And here I was getting a full-time job as a producer behind the scenes. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but who's going to turn down a full-time job at a TV station when you're in college for that? So I said, I'll put school on hold for a semester and see how this goes. And that was 1995, and I never went back.
So as someone who isn't necessarily, let's call it, traditionally trained for the career that you're in, so you think you're self-taught? How did you teach yourself in that? Because I think even in 1995, the internet wasn't a super big thing at that point, or at least not to the extent it is now. I mean, 22, 23 years later, like, how did you teach yourself in that kind of scenario?
I think in any industry, but particularly in an industry like TV news and media in general, you kind of have to have something in you from the get-go. There's stuff that can't be taught, whether it's a sort of a natural intuition or, whether it's just a gut. You got to have that as a basis. And you'll find that most of your successful people, especially in this industry, have that. I feel incredibly blessed and lucky that I had that. So I went into my first job working behind the scenes as a producer at this station, not necessarily knowing everything. I was an idiot. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I kind of had that internal foundation. And so you just listen to everyone. You watch who the people in your newsroom look up to, and then you listen to that person. You always learn. You remember that you know nothing, and you're just there to soak it all in. A lot of times you see kids come in to the business, and they've got their degree, and that's awesome. And I think everyone should go to college because it's not only great for your future, it's a wonderful experience. But they come out of these schools and they know it all. I've got my degree from wherever, and that's great. That's a great foundation. But if you're not there to listen and learn from the people who have been doing it for 2 decades, that paper is useless.
I'm gonna touch on this. So I believe that education is insanely important. However, I believe that for people to have to go through the scenarios that they have to, the financial debt that they have to go through, right? I think 80% of Americans are in debt on college debt or something like that, and then they can't find jobs and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know that college is for everyone. I think education is for everyone. But I love the mindset that you just said, where it's like, oh, like, make sure that you're constantly learning. Because I remember this. I remember my first job out of college. I don't even know if you had to have been there at that point. Was at Channel 3 in the market that you live in. And I remember I'd been to school 5 years. I was 22 or 23 at that point. I learned more that first week than I did any of the other time. And I did do exactly what you were saying. And I listened, and I was terrible. I'm still terrible. But I did that. So why do you think so many people suck at that and are not willing to kind of learn from people that have lived it before them?
And that's a good way to put it, too. I think it's a combination of things, and Lord knows I'm not an expert, but you got folks who are incredibly smart. They are book smart, and they can tell you a fact from here to eternity, and they're going to be right every time. But there's no substitute for experience. And you come out of an institution where for 4 years, you're being taught, this is how it is, this is how it is. And again, I don't have much experience in journalism schools, but real world versus what they teach you in a college classroom in a lecture hall is not going to be the same thing. So I think it's hard for young people to get out of that mindset that they know everything. They're a college graduate, and by the time they're 30, they need to be at this level in their job, making this amount of money. Because I tell you what, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to happen that way. And the earlier you figure that out and just sort of break down that wall, the more you're going to soak in and realize just go on for the ride. It's going to be awesome.
Do you know who Chris Jericho is?
The wrestler guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has this saying, he's like, soak it in, man. And I keep thinking about that. But understand that. So a lot of good stuff there. So when I was in journalism school, and by the way, like, I went to West Virginia University. I love West Virginia University. I loved going to school there. The actual school part of it, I don't know, really wasn't that hard. Like, I barely did anything. I got drunk every night. Like, maybe not every night, but I went out. Like, I had a good time. Yada, yada, yada.
Did you burn any couches?
I did not, but I've seen couches being burnt, which is just a really interesting thing. Really interesting thing. The first time I ever saw one, it was like a 14-foot couch, or it was couches on top of couches, and the flames like 14 feet high. I was on a bus to get back to my dorm at the point. Like, it was very interesting. But I remembered my senior year, my last semester, was when I actually got into the, what do we call this? The actual, like, the news stuff.
Okay.
And I had to do a story once every 2 weeks.
Oh,
and then,
what?
and then so what I'm getting at is, you know this in TV, you read 1 million stories a day now. Not that many, but probably at least 100.
Seems that way.
Right? In reporting standpoint, you have to do at least one story a day most of the time. And so I'm getting it, I'm like, all right, we can do one story a day. This is going to be great. No. So I think people should do like more internships, more apprenticeships, and even test the waters. And if you really think about it, that's what you did in your kind of first part of the career too.
And to go back to a point you made earlier, I think things like internships, apprenticeships, not only in TV, but in any industry, I think they are vital, because you may find out that you are interested in something totally different from what you thought you were. And on the same token, companies have to make it worthwhile for these students. These days of unpaid internships, they need to end yesterday, because what that's doing, you are shutting out qualified people in your field who can't afford to take a semester off from their job while in school to work for free, to do slave labor for you, basically. Interns need to be paid. And I think that that's going to open up that field for a lot more people who otherwise might not be able to make that swing.
And I really think if you use the word apprenticeship and it's really guiding someone through a process, a lot of those things are a lot shorter time frame too, instead of a 4 or 5 year university. You know, and you're really getting into that trade. You know, I look at some of the classes that I had to take that just cost me thousands of dollars that weren't worth it at all, clearly. And it's just like, and I love that you really didn't go to school and that you just got into it, because I think more people need to do that. So obviously I have the show now. I have my own show on ABC as well, and I do a lot of things in front of a camera. Most of the time not in front of like a live audience like you do, in front of a camera. But I think the one thing that's probably gotten me the most comfortable is actually doing live shows on like Google Hangouts or YouTube or Facebook Live. Do you practice to become better, or how did you practice to become more comfortable? Because public speaking is the number one fear. And if you really think about it, public speaking is definitely being on TV too.
Well, that's the thing. I do 5 hours of news every day, of live television. And I don't think twice about who's watching on the other side. From the standpoint of, oh my gosh, all these people are watching, I'm nervous. I had to MC 3 events this weekend with maybe 300 people in each room, and I had an anxiety attack before each one. Oh, there's something about all of those people staring at you. And the pressure to entertain or inform or whatever you're there to do, that is wild. So the TV thing, that's a piece of cake. I do remember when I was younger, I would practice in front of a mirror. High school, first TV jobs, because that was the Google Hangout back then. You know, we didn't have webcams and Google Hangouts. You had your bedroom mirror, and I would practice doing live reports, just making stuff up in front of the mirror. And I'm sure my mom wondered what the hell was going on in that room. But Mom, you're welcome.
That's really interesting. that you were terrified getting in front of all those people?
To this day, I cannot stand it. It's part of the job, and it's important, and I'm glad to do it. But I freak out.
Do you get paid to do stuff like that?
No. Which I have mixed feelings about. Obviously, part of my job as a local journalist and TV personality is to be connected to my community. So I am grateful for the opportunity to be able to be involved in all these community events. However, like I did an event over the weekend with a lady who's a single mother. So that was 5 hours out of her day that she had to pay for a babysitter to go and MC this thing for free. So it's tough. And especially when you're not in New York or LA, it's not like you're making a ton of money as a local news person. But no, there's generally not pay for that.
Interesting. So I was just telling you this. Clearly you don't follow me enough, but I just signed a book deal. I wrote a book called Anomaly, How to Finally Stand Out from the Crowd. The quick genesis of it is I look back at the last decade of my life and I recognize that some form of question that people were asking me was, I have this tool, I have this business, I have this product, this service, but no one knows about it. How do I be seen? And so I wrote a book kind of encapsulating all of what I've learned on how to do that. And I was looking at kind of speaker pages because one of the things that people do is they go and do book tours or they go and give speaking gigs. And so some of them get paid clearly to do it. That's going to be definitely part of my strategy. Some of them also sell books in that. That's also part of my strategy. And then there's this one guy, his name's Rand Fishkin, I believe, out of Portland. And he has this cool strip. It's a great name. He's got even funkier hair than me. Definitely more funky hair than you. It looks good today. But he has this thing where, you pay a certain amount of money, you get a certain amount of books, but then he also wants you to give back to his charity of choice of like $500.
Love that.
I thought that was pretty interesting. And so maybe when you're doing this, you could ask these groups that, hey, I want you to give some money to the charity of my choice. Because you do a lot with the St. Jude Dream Home and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm now the station ambassador for Susan G. Komen. So if you think of breasts, think of TV's Blaine Stewart.
Well, that's a good segue into my next question. When you were with Jimmy Fallon on TV late one night, do you think that's why you are... tell me a little bit about how that happened, I guess. And then do you think that's why you are now the Susan G. Komen breast guy?
Well, here's how that happened. And I've been on a couple of these. Like I was on Fallon. Seth Meyers picked up something we did. They used us on Kimmel for unnecessary censorship one night. But oddly enough, never picked up by my own network's late night shows, but maybe one day. So the Fallon thing, we did a story on the morning news maybe a week before it aired. And it was about the Victoria's Secret fantasy bra, the big $3 million bra that's all decked out in diamonds. And they have it out there in the fashion show. And I made a comment to my co-anchor. I said, for most guys, a fantasy bra is one they can actually unhook, which tell me I'm wrong. And that was it. We laughed. I put it on my Twitter and, some people thought it was funny and that was the end of it. Fast forward about a week. It's Halloween. I'm out getting some drinks in a costume and my phone starts blowing up around 11:45 that night. They're like, you were just on the Tonight Show. Oh my, what are you talking about? I guess they just troll the internet for these clips. I don't know what they do. Maybe somebody sent it in. I'm glad. It was kind of cool. I don't know why. If that has any connection to me being with Susan G. Komen, I'm certainly glad to do it. I'll take whatever I can get. But it was just kind of cool. Now I'm hoping to win the ticket lottery to get some tickets to see Fallon in person, so I can meet him and say hi. I'm the boob guy.
What were you wearing that night? Because it was Halloween.
It was a couple of years ago. Last year I was Cards Against Humanity. I think I was a group costume. It was rock, paper, scissors. And I was scissors.
Clever.
Yeah.
This is going to turn into one of my favorite interviews. I could tell already.
I miss talking to you, man.
So Twitter is something that I think it seems like that's your favorite kind of tool of choice, your favorite media of choice.
Yeah, I'm a big Twitter fan. I like the immediacy of it.
how do you decide, or kind of what tools do you use to get those quick videos out there? Because I saw something this morning where you're talking about your tie. Obviously, that bra video was something out there. Like, are you clipping those pieces? How are you getting them out there? Like, what are you doing? Did that Jimmy? I'm asking like a million questions. Like, did that Jimmy Fallon piece go viral without Jimmy? And maybe that's another way they found it.
So I'm the one clipping all of that because I feel, unless you're Jimmy Fallon, you are your best PR person on this kind of level. So I try to post 2 or 3 clips a day, and I try to do it as it happens. And then I send them out again later in the day.
So how are you doing that then? What tool are you grabbing to do that?
So we have built into our newsroom software, we have something that records all the shows. There's a website. It's online-convert.com. I pay $7 a month, and it converts the video to any format, any length, and I just pop it up there. From start to finish, it takes about 3 minutes once we do the bit on air to have it posted. So I like that immediacy of it. Also because, it's the hope of someone sees that in their timeline. Oh, wow, this just happened. I need to turn that show on right now to see what they're going to do next.
And I can't remember if you just said that. Did you say that the Jimmy Fallon one had a lot of retweets, loves, whatever?
So it had done well before the Fallon thing, but after that, it really blew up. And I reposted it, with the clip from his show, and that set me up for probably a couple of weeks of just notifications nonstop. Which, part of the thing we get judged on in local TV now. It's not just the Nielsen ratings on who watches your shows. We have social media ratings now, and each person gets ranked in a particular market on how well they do on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And so that's posted daily on a live computer screen in the newsroom, so we can see in real time who has the best social media ratings.
So like, who's the most clout, basically?
Yeah, it's basically.
What tool is that?
It's called ShareRocket.
Interesting.
And so. Yeah, it pulls all your social media accounts, and it weighs Facebook a lot more than Twitter and Instagram, which is why I try to make sure I do a lot on Facebook. That is by far my least favorite platform for many reasons. But yeah, it's an interesting tool if newsrooms know how to harness it, and it's not just a competition of who wants to be number one. What do you do with that reach after? Okay, I'm number one for a week. What do I do with it now? How do I use that to my advantage, to my business's advantage, so that it's more than just bragging rights?
Very, 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 very interesting. So ShareRocket.com, that's something that this TV station pays for?
Yeah, so and there are a couple of different types of services, but ShareRocket is sort of the big boy of them. And so the stations pay, I'm guessing, a monthly fee or an annual license fee. And every morning at 6 o'clock, we get, just like the ratings reports, we get those emailed to us. And then there's also a live monitor that we have in our newsroom that shows the top 10 people in that particular market at any given time.
And so does someone put all the names in there and say, here are all the, like, how does that piece work with it? And like, are there other stations?
Yeah, because I know Channel 13 uses it as well. I don't know if the other station in our market uses it. And I'm not exactly sure. I know we don't specify the names. So I don't know if the company goes through and says, okay, here are the media people in this market. I know you have to be verified to be on it. So I think that's one of the things they look for.
Very interesting. I'm definitely going to check that out. A few years ago, I'd just been getting into my back into my business career. It was probably November of 2012. Layla Muhammad was still at the TV station with you, and you guys were reading the newspaper. I believe you were calling it the newspaper editions. You pulled out on page 3 something with me in it, an event. Why did you talk about me that day?
I think I was just excited to see your name in the newspaper. I remember that day, and I think the post is still on YouTube somewhere. Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time. I was excited for you. I remember when you left the TV station, and then I thought, man, that's a ballsy move. I mean, you go from a sure thing job in a pretty decent TV station where, you went to school for this was going to be your livelihood. And then the next day, I'm going to try this new thing that has no guarantee of working out. I don't know what the future holds, but I think I'm going to be pretty awesome at it. So let's give it a try. Man, who does that? So I was just kind of geeked to see what you were going to do.
Sure. And you know what's interesting is I talk a lot about this now, and I feel like there's this path, this roadmap that everyone tells us to go on. You know, they told you there's one way to do it. You definitely didn't do it. They told me it's a certain way to do it. And even though this path, it was okay that I could be on, I recognized that I just wasn't happy in doing it, and that I could go to a different station, a different market, and I was still going to be doing the exact same thing every day and still was going to be miserable. And so, you know, risky maybe from a financial standpoint, risky, well, I wasn't making any money, so it didn't matter. But risky from the, am I going to blow my life because it's going to be miserable was far more important. And it's crazy to think, because it was at 20, I started, my first day at Channel 3 was September 24th of 07, and my last day was September 24th of 10.
Wow, it was 07. I didn't realize it was that long ago.
Yeah, so I've been gone from that place 8 years. It's been the greatest 8 years of my life.
It's amazing how much has changed, yet how much is still the same.
Yeah, I still have great hair. How many stations have you worked at?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my 5th station, my 3rd on air for TV.
Is the grass always greener on the other side, or that saying?
Unless you're in a really horrible place, the grass is the same color just about everywhere. I mean, there are some stations and some situations in some cities where you're just going to be miserable because, listen, it's not going to be great. But to say that there's this panacea and this perfect TV station out there, no, they all have their problems. You just got to get in where you're fitted.
When you get pitched like a story, when you get like a pitched a story idea, and someone just blatantly says, you know, pick me, pick me, pick me, or they go an opposite way and try and create a relationship with you, do you find that those people who actually create a relationship with you, you end up doing more stories on than the opposite?
Absolutely. I mean, that is probably the best way to get me to do a story, is to have that relationship with me. Because here's the deal. I know you. I'm going to trust you and know that you're not going to pitch some junk to me that my bosses don't want to see, the viewers don't want to see. So that is, that goes back to trust. And, you know, it goes both ways, too, because I'm sure the people who are pitching the stories want to be able to trust the journalist or the storyteller that they can tell the story fairly, accurately, in the light that they want it to get out, too. So that goes both ways. You pester me, and I'll probably just ignore you.
Right. So I don't know if newsrooms are still the same, but I remember it was Carla Lamont. Is she still there?
No, she's up at a station in Richmond now, closer to home.
Got it. But at the newsroom, what would happen, people would fax in some press release. She would get it. She would look at the data when it was going to be, and they would put it in a file, and maybe they would do a story like that. Are newsrooms pretty much still the same?
So the one thing I will say that we have come a long way in our newsroom, and I would say that it's in a majority of newsrooms, there's a lot more planning involved now. You know, email certainly helps, and faxes. I don't know if we get faxes anymore. But, you know, every Thursday, we have our first weekend planning meeting, for example. Then we have another one on Friday. The managers are always in meetings, but it kind of helps. And it still kind of works like that, but at least, you know, we're going to look for X amount of, you know, uplifting stories or community type stories every day. So it's kind of the same in that respect, but we do kind of plan out a little more in advance now. The other thing that helps us cover stories that we might not normally make a priority or get to is people are doing the work for us. The easiest way to get your story on TV, send us a few lines about what's happening or what happened. Send us some pictures. If you shoot a 15-second video on your iPhone, there's a good chance we're at least going to heavily look at it because you've done the work for us. We don't have to expend any energy. We have content. That iPhone right there.
But make sure you shoot it this way, right?
Please, no vertical video. Unless your TV screen is vertical, why are you using vertical video? Yeah.
But you do think that like when it's easier for a reporter, an anchor, or some sort of personality to go and pitch that story to the newsroom than to you just to pitch it to the news desk, if you will, or just the spray and pray method.
I mean, in any sort of business situation, having an in is going to give you an advantage. So if you have an ambassador or someone who's trusted in the news, going to say, "Hey, talk to this guy. I know this guy, and he says, this is going to be a great story. I think it's worthwhile." Yeah, that carries a ton more weight than just, "Here's our press release. We invite you to come out and cover it."
There's a part of my book about that and how like it doesn't work. So, I would call you a media personality or a personal brand associated with you. But I want to question some of the things that you are not doing with some of the goals that you have in life. So your goal is to work at a bigger station, maybe?
I mean, I think that's probably the goal for a lot of folks. I love it here in Norfolk, but if the right situation comes along, that is, certainly something to entertain. That's the PR response right there.
Yeah, I know what that really means, and you guys can take it however you want as well. So you are basically a personality. You have a personal brand, yet you're building your personality or your brand and not attaching it to a website or something that is a document that houses all of that information. Yes, it's all on Twitter. Yes, it's all on Facebook, but you got to scroll forever to find that, right? So why have you talked about the internet being something that's powerful, but haven't necessarily leveraged it in the way that you should so that you can be hitting some of your quote unquote next step goals?
I think that is a ridiculously incredible point. It is something that I've just been lazy about. One of the excuses I use is I want BlaineStewart.com. That's my name. You want to own your name, right? You got to own your name, especially if you're a media personality. And that someone is sitting on that website. So I have BlaineStewart.net, which is not nearly as exciting. And I toyed around with it. I buy a domain. All right, here's what I'm going to do. And then I haven't done anything with it because I was lazy. And full good and well, you're absolutely right. You need that central clearinghouse, something you control for your own brand that's like a one-stop shop, as opposed to someone maybe finding you on LinkedIn or Twitter.
And another reason why is because these things, social media doesn't necessarily index. So I'm going to try and give you a little bit of tech behind this so you understand why this is even better for you too. So you have these big, powerful moments where you get on Jimmy Fallon or VH1 calls and says, "Oh, we're going to talk about you with this." And then that sits, in the pit of misery called the internet forever. You know what that's from. So it sits in this place forever. But if someone isn't searching for that, or if someone doesn't just miraculously come and find that, they're not going to. And so you're not leveraging your full power to actually be found and to kind of showcase who you are. So for you guys listening now, we're recording this on May 9th, it's about 2:14 Eastern Standard Time, PM, not AM. BlaineStewart.com is available for purchase for a couple $100s. Blaine is refusing to buy this domain. After this, I'm going to go buy that domain and make the number so much higher.
Good. Make some money off of me. That's great. I like that.
I mean, someone's got to, right?
Right?
Oh, that's a good idea. Someone's going to do that. But I think by showcasing all that stuff, it's something even as I've had a business or I have a business, I'm thinking about, moving my stuff over to a personal site as well. My domain is actually not available. But I've started branding things my name, ZACK Miller, says SAYS as that thing. So while I have a website that tells me all that stuff, it's not necessarily associated with my name. So I'm kind of in the same boat with you. So you can do the same thing to me if you want. Ironically, I've had several conversations with guests on this show about taking a razor and doing this for the first time. We're talking about finally shaving your head because is it going or growing bald?
Going
Going
bald.
going bald. I always, yeah. So when did you finally make that decision? And was it like a terrifying one?
So I discovered probably in my mid to late 20s that I would not have the luxurious head of hair like, say, Zach Miller has for the rest of my life. It started retreating, and it had gotten to the point, I was in my early 30s, where I still had hair, but there were parts that were a lot thinner than others. And I could tell that in 3 to 5 years, it really wasn't going to be pretty, that in between stage. And I knew that wasn't right for me. So I wanted to shave my head probably about 2 years before I ended up doing it. I couldn't get a boss. You know, when you're on TV, you have to get the bosses to approve everything you do, including haircuts and outfits and things like that. I finally got a news director who brought me into his office unsolicited and said, "We got to do something about your hair. It's starting to leave you. Have you ever thought about shaving it?" And I said,
Who was
"Mike,
it?
you're my hero." Shane Moreland,
Oh
who is
God.
he's the one who did it, because you started at my station in what, fall of 2007.
Yep.
I did it in August of 2007.
Very, very interesting. And you never want to do toupee or anything like that.
I
What do they
mean,
call it? Hair plugs or whatever.
I think part of the reason I never explored that is because those things weren't cheap, especially back in the day.
Mm.
And, you know, working as a reporter at the time in a TV station, you weren't making a lot of money. But that's the thing you have to do forever. You know, I am lucky that I have a normal shaped head, so might as well just rock it, you know?
Newsrooms are notorious for a lot of egos. They're notorious for having a lot of negativity. You seem to have been able to control that through your years. For someone that might be listening, that they don't have to be in a newsroom, but that is just in kind of a terrible office environment. How do you stay happy or positive in an egotistical, negative place?
That is a lesson that it took a long time for me to learn. I've been in situations in various newsrooms where I felt surrounded by just really dark people who were unhappy themselves, and it brought everyone down, or they had a huge ego. And I think a couple of things I learned. Number one, I leave it all at work. Remind yourself that you are there to get a job done, to do it to the best of your ability, and I don't care about anyone else in that room or in that building. And that takes a long time to learn, because you want to get along with your coworkers. I mean, that's human nature, right? But you're not there to make friends. If you are friends with your coworkers, that's a nice bonus. So I learned that. Number two, I leave it at work. At 12:27, the 12 o'clock news ends. By 12:29, I'm in my car, and I do not think about that place until 3:45 the next morning when I come in. And I get it. A lot of people don't have that luxury. You know, you're on 24/7 with work and your phones and this and that. The more you can leave at work and concentrate on your own happiness at home, that's what I learned.
So I agree with what you're saying, but I disagree with a piece of it too. People saying, "Oh, I'm 24/7, whatever." Like, no, like you control what you consume and do with your mind. You consume what you're doing when you leave that place. And so I don't have social media on my phone. I've literally deleted it, and people think I have. I did it about a month ago, and I'm definitely not adding it back. And I didn't have notifications on my phone and stuff like that. Like, people feel like they have to be living a specific way, and I just think that's wrong. So you live what, 5 blocks from your house?
Yeah.
And you drive?
Work. It depends. If I'm running late, I drive. If I have time and the weather's good, I'll walk.
Do you agree or disagree that newsrooms are typically those kind of ways that I described?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've got a room full of people who want to be on TV. Even the nicest, most modest people in TV news have a bit of an ego. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. You have to have a little bit of that to want to do that kind of work. You have to have an ego to be president. I mean, to think that you can solve the world's problems. So ego is not necessarily bad. It's how you manage it. Knowing your worth and wanting to be at the front and center of something is different than being an egotistical jerk, which there are a lot of those in TV news.
You described a couple scenarios that are easy to do after you leave. What about when you're actually there and there's a coworker that it's not necessarily a great thing? Because especially with the people that you see on air, it seems like you guys have great chemistry, and I'm not saying that you don't, but like, how do you then handle situations like that when you haven't had good chemistry over the years, or that you don't necessarily like that person?
I will say this, and I don't think she'll be mad at me for telling this story. So I had a co-anchor for a number of years. Her name is Layla, and she's gone on. She hosts a nationally syndicated show for our company out in Dallas now. When we started anchoring together, we could not stand each other. We hated each other. It was to the point where we would be fine while the camera was on. The minute the camera goes off, we just didn't speak. Or if we did, it was very like terse. And I want to say it wasn't until maybe a year and a half in to our pairing on air, we just had it out. We had a knockdown, drag out screaming match in one of the edit bay number 2. And
is that the famous edit bay?
No, that's edit bay 6, which is no longer. They only have 2 edit bays now. The rest of them. But that's funny. Yeah. So I think, I don't want to say the word confrontation, but I think if there's someone you have to work with very closely and you're just butting heads, you've got to confront that issue head on. Whether it's a meeting, whether it's going to higher ups, you got to fix it. So in that respect, working with someone that you don't get along with sucks. But you got to keep smiling and you've got to be the bigger person. And at the end of the day, I think that kind of person comes out on top.
Communication is always insanely important. So what were the issues with you and Layla? Had you guys worked together like at the same station at that point? Like, why did you dislike each other? Like,
it was two, and I'm going to use this term loosely, like big personalities. We were both very big people when it comes to that. And I don't know what set her off or what set me off, but we butted heads. When you have two people who are so similar to each other that sometimes it doesn't work out, that's kind of what it was until we realized that we had so much in common. And now she is, without a doubt, my best friend.
Right, because I've seen pictures of you and that you guys traveled together or traveled to each other's cities and whatnot. So during that confrontation, that communication battle in Edit Bay 2, that's funny. Like, did you guys pre-plan this? Were you guys just pissed off afterwards? Like, how did you guys decide that you guys were kind of cool at the end of it?
It was, I remember a lot of it. It was after a morning show. So it was maybe 9:15. And I don't know why she was working in there. I don't know why I went in there to talk with her about something, work related. And it just sort of escalated. Like it was just, we were being snappy with each other. And I don't remember what she said to trigger me saying the following, but I said something to the effect of, "I don't understand why you're so mean to me." And that's the first time in a year and a half, we had addressed the elephant in the room. And I don't remember the words that were said. There was shouting back and forth, but at the end of it, we all took a deep breath and we're like, all right, okay. And I remember saying, "Listen, I respect you. I want to do nothing but show respect to you." She said she felt the same way. The next day we were laughing out there. It does not always work out like that.
So why was Layla so mean? What did she do?
In my mind, she was mean. Now, she might not have been mean to the casual observer. In my mind, she was mean because I had just started on the show. This was her show, and then they added me to it because they moved someone else off. I've been an anchor at other cities, and so I'm coming in thinking, finally, I'm where I belong. I've been toiling as a reporter.
What year is this, by the way, around?
This is 2010.
Okay, so I wasn't there at that point.
This is 2010.
Or it might have been.
Yeah, this was probably the end of, this was summer of 2010. And so I'm thinking, finally, I get to do my thing. She's looking at it as, who is this idiot with the bald head coming in, trying to replace my friend and talented co-anchors Patrick Rocky, who moved to the evening shows. So it was one of those things where I felt like, in hindsight, hey, look at me. I'm an anchor now, and I deserve this. And she's probably looking at it as, who does this think he is? And I think that probably didn't help. So from my end, I'm sure I was not a saint.
You were an ain't.
I was a bag over the head.
So, were you playing meteorologist at that point?
Yeah.
How did you say that fake meteorology thing?
I was a forecaster.
A forecaster. Do they still do that?
No, I haven't done weather in about 2 years. I miss it. I'm not saying I would do that full time because I'm not that smart, but it's fun to keep your hand into different things just as a hobby. It's fun to do.
What do you do in your free time?
Sleep. And I say that jokingly, but it's true. My alarm goes off. By the time this airs, we will have started our news 30 minutes earlier in the morning. So we're starting at 4:30 come the end of...
Let's talk about that for a second. So, I don't mean to get you in trouble in this conversation at all. So be as PC as you need to be. But I have found that a lot of news organizations decide to add the same content in masses. So, they'll do... It used to be some sort of morning show. Let's just say from 6 to 7, then a noon show for 30 minutes, and then 60 minutes of news from 5 to 6 or something like that. Now they've decided that we just need to go, these organizations to go 4 to 8 p.m. and 4 to 8 a.m. and 12 to 2 p.m. Do you believe that adding a longer piece of content or the same piece of content for a longer period of time is the right thing, or are there different ways to do it? And do you get to have any say in these conversations? Because to the outsider, it seems like, why are you producing the same things over again instead of kind of creating something that would get more consumption?
So here's, and you've raised a number of great points. Let me, the first thing is the average television news viewer watches 2 newscasts a week on any station. So if you're Jane Doe, the average viewer, you might watch the 12 o'clock news on Channel 7 on a Wednesday and the 6 p.m. news on Channel 9 on a Friday. And that's all you get. So you've got to sort of cast a wide net because people are popping in and out all over the place. And so the theory is the more you're there, the more there's a chance to sample you. Why run another half hour of the national news show or, a rerun of some syndicated show when you can give local content? And I picked up the use of the word content because that's what it's all about these days. It is about content. What can I get on the air that can also be shared on, social media platforms, on our web platform? We are now, you can watch our stories on Apple TV, on Amazon Prime. And obviously that's going to be the future, I think, of local TV news is just, we're going to be more of a distributor than a destination, a channel. So it's also cheaper to produce local TV news than it is to run a syndicated show. Stations have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to show Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. Or you could probably spend about $50,000 a year on a local newscast. So it makes sense from a budgetary standpoint too. But also, morning TV. Think about the average person's morning routine. The TV's on in the background. They're not a captive audience. They're not watching. So we're going to repeat stuff. The news you see at 4:30 a.m. on my station, you might see the same thing word for word at 6:30. But who's watching all 2 hours? We don't expect you to. We're here for you to get what you need and go.
I believe that the future is Facebook Live in kind of the same way that you just said that. So people, you're going to be building personalities. So, Blaine Stewart, it's not Blaine Stewart. I know that, or I don't think that's your Facebook page, but Blaine Stewart's Facebook page that goes live, and then you're going to have stations buying that person is how I kind of see the future going.
It's very interesting that you say that I am not at liberty to say much about this, but we are in the process of launching something similar to that very soon. So
But as a station, not as an individual.
It's going to be through my page.
Sure.
So yeah, you're on the right track.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these people that have 100,000, 500,000, millions of actual viewers every day, where
Who engage with them.
who engage with them, right? And so when people disagree with this, I'm like, you're so wrong. You don't even understand how this stuff works. But you just said it, right? Two people watch a couple of minutes a week, or one person watches 2 episodes of something a week of your shows. Where if you're on Facebook and you have that real engagement, people will consume that all freaking day.
Absolutely. And you're right about it being through a person as opposed to an entity, because they trust the person more so. Because you look at people who trash, national news networks. They're fake news, or they're this or that. Yet you bring up a certain personality. Oh no, I like her. She's cool. It's the people are the brands of the future. You're absolutely right.
Dab. That's the first time I've done that on the show. Okay. Rhoda Young.
Oh God.
She was on Comedy Central's.
Hasn't she been on?
God, cannot believe I can't think of the name of the show. Tosh 2.0. She was on Tosh 2.0. Did you know that?
I think I saw some clips of that.
Don't tell me you didn't watch the whole thing. You watched it.
I'll be honest with you. I turn my TV on once a day, and that's to watch 3 episodes of The Office. Other than that, I certainly don't watch TV. And it probably came across my stream on social media, but I never. I am sure she is a lovely person. I don't know that I'm her biggest fan, so I would not seek out that content.
Okay. Okay, so for those of you who guys don't know, Rhoda Young is someone who lives in Blaine and I's backyard. Not literal backyard, but
she's right out there.
Literally right out the back door. She lives in the city that we live in, and has taken her iPhone and has gone live on this. And some of the views has like 500,000 views per live view. She was on Tosh 2.0. And I actually want to get her on the show. Apparently she drives for HRT, which is pretty crazy. Yeah. So she bought her a microphone. So she was on the show. So why don't you, what is it that you don't appreciate about her doing what she's doing? Because she's basically doing journalism 101 in the thing that we just said. Build a personality on Facebook Live. Get out to the scene and tell the stories. She's doing that on a national presence. Why? What are you pushing back against?
The 2 things. And I agree with everything you just said. The 2 things that maybe are not my favorite about what I'm sure is a wonderful woman is that her methods are a little unorthodox. And I'm not saying you have to be a button-down member of the establishment. Listen, if that were the case, I probably wouldn't have a job. But when you roll up to a crime scene or a fire scene and start spewing obscenities, acting as a member of the press, and shouting things out like, what's going on up in this bitch? It makes us all look bad. And so the methods sometimes for me are a little much. I think she's built a successful media brand. God love her for that. I would kill for 500,000 views on one live stream.
And she solved a crime once.
She solved a crime once. Listen, I would buy her a drink if I met her. Also, yeah, I'm just not a fan of maybe the colorful language, or sometimes I feel like she's in the way a little too much. But, there's room for everybody at the table.
So it's a fine line for you. So you, and I use this word lightly, you play someone on TV to make sure you're playing a certain thing, but then when you leave that station, all that other stuff is okay?
I just think...
And maybe not all that other stuff, but I've heard you cuss before is what I'm that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, if I'm looking to get information about what's happening in my community, Blaine Stewart, and maybe I'm the only one, don't know that I would trust it from someone who, while they're telling me about a crime that's happening or, a devastating house fire, is starting it off with "What's up in this bitch." It's for me. That's just my personal taste. I don't care what you do at home, but when there's a gravity of something like someone's losing their home, that's not a joke. It's not funny. And the thing is, most people tuning into her are tuning in because she's funny, and she is funny. But she's being funny at a place. I don't know that that's the right time
Sure.
for that kind of content when someone who might be your neighbor is losing their house.
She certainly knows her target customer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I would have a drink with her tomorrow.
I have this weird feeling that there's going to be this battle now between you and Rhoda Young, and I'm going to be the instigator because I'm totally going to take this snippet out, and I'm going to use it, and then she's going to. Yeah, and then we're going to get this on Jimmy Fallon, and then I'm going to be the instigator, and then it's going to be great.
All right. Count me in.
Count me in, Rhoda Young. Journalism. The First Amendment of kind of freedom of press and stuff like that. Journalism has changed a lot. The press has changed a lot. It seems like it's a lot more about entertainment than it is about actually kind of journalism or press in that kind of way. What are your thoughts on that? Do you disagree with me? People that, think about the entertainment side of it instead of the press side of it. Like, where is journalism? What's the state of journalism today?
I think those are all valid points. This is not your grandfather's journalism. And I think that much like the rest of the world has evolved, if you look at where we were between, say, the 50s and 60s, in a decade, things change and things, obviously grow. But with technology the way it is now, with just the way changing social attitudes, the world itself is evolving at such a rapid rate. I mean, something that you might have thought would be 20 years off. They're talking about flying cars. Like Uber is going to do taxis in the sky, and they're going to have that running in 3 years. I mean, so I think that the world of journalism, much like anything else, has evolved along with it. For the good? I don't know about that. There's a lot of debate on things like opinion journalism. You got every cable news network. If you have an ideology, you can find the channel that fits that. And I think that comes with more options. People have to stay competitive. You look at print journalism, they have not evolved in the sense of, people say newspapers are a dying industry. Now, there are places like New York Times, Washington Post, even our local newspaper here, who have a great online presence and do great work. Their style has not evolved, but neither has their journalism. And you look at all the big stories that come out, a lot of them, all the groundwork is done, New York Times, Washington Post. They're still doing real blood and guts, hardcore journalism. What you see on the local news, it's content. And there's journalism in that content. It's sort of the spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down.
It's the $3 million bra.
I got to tell you, I have to wake you up in the world every morning and tell you, here's all the horrible things that happened while you were sleeping. Here's why the traffic sucks and you're going to be late to work. Here's why it's going to rain and you'll probably forget your umbrella. I got to put a smile on your face at the end of that, or I'm just the biggest jerk.
So the story I like to call or use as an example with journalism and kind of even trusting and stuff like this is, now I know you didn't go to journalism school, but I know you know what being a journalist is. So I know you know that. When I've always been taught, say what?
I've known some journalists, yeah.
Yes, you know some journalists. But basically there's, you get multiple sides to the story. Those are called the facts, stuff like that. So the Ryan Lochte story from the Olympics a few years ago, where they came out with the case to be, in my opinion, to just get the story out there. It became this big story, and there wasn't a lot of facts yet and stuff like that. And then when actual journalism happened, or actually fact-finding happened, we found out that maybe this really didn't happen the way that we did it, or that Mr. Lochte had said it had. So knowing a simple story like that people say, oh, it has international ramifications. It was basically just a lie. Like, and you might have covered. I don't know if you did or didn't. You probably said something about it, but like if a story like that, how is and then we find out that like, oh, this person that I trust, told me that this is what's going on. Not Ryan Lochte, like this news person, and then now a few days later I'm telling you, actually we didn't do any fact checking to figure out what really happened. Like how do then people actually trust when it was such a simple story like that?
That's a great question. I think part of it is part of the problem is the immediacy, the push to get something on right away, because you're going to get scooped if you don't. So you've got to get it on, get it on. I remember one of the first guys I ever worked for in this business back in 1996. Really old, cranky newsman, like stereotypical 1980s newsroom guy. And he said, you get it right and you'll eventually be first, but you never are going to be first if you get it wrong. So I remember that years later. I have a problem sometimes with the way news organizations rush to get something on the air or rush to get something online when it hasn't been fully vetted. And you've got, oh, well, so-and-so says it. Just because someone says something doesn't mean it's newsworthy. I mean, if your wife came home and told you, I don't know, something, you're going to probably trust her because you have that relationship. You know that she hasn't lied. She comes home and lies to you once, you're going to question everything she says after that. And so you're absolutely right. I think journalists have a duty, like in the Ryan Lochte case. And NBC had an exclusive on that. They're the exclusive provider of the Olympics. They're the only ones there, and they still rushed it to air because, well, we gotta have it on first. I think that was a monumental screw up. And it's hard to regain that trust. The sad part is that I feel our attention span these days, it's gone. On to the next thing. And so I forgot about that until you just brought it up.
Well, I use this example because it's such a stupid scenario, right? Like, no offense to the Olympics, no offense to swimming. I'm a swimmer. I love swimming. No offense to Ryan Lochte. But this was not that big of a deal compared to some of the other things that have happened. So that's why I like to use the example of this is such a light, fluffy story, basically. If someone's going to screw this up, imagine what they'll do with something that's actually important.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Do you ever disagree?
Yeah, sometimes. Not right now.
Are you going to get down and be like, man, everything I said to you I disagreed with, I just agreed with you to make you feel better?
I'm just going to issue a statement after denying that this ever happened.
That would be sad. What's something that you like to talk a lot about right now? Like, what's something that's got you super passionate?
I am a bit of a politics fiend. I try to stay away from discussing that publicly, obviously. But I tried. I've gotten this thing now where I subscribe to New York Times, Washington Post on my iPad, and so that's sort of my afternoon ritual. Is I'm just devouring political news because for two reasons. Number one, it's part of my job to know what's going on, but also I feel the more informed I am as a journalist, the better context I can give to my viewers if something like that comes up. And so I know this is boring and it's work related, but the political landscape over the past couple of years has been really interesting. And people either really want to learn more about it or they just want to tune it out completely. And that's my thing now. I just can't get enough of that. We live in a time right now that in 20 or 30 years, if the world's still around, they're going to talk about it as if it's some sort of crazy fable. And I'm not saying one way or the other politically. I'm just saying wherever you are on the political spectrum, you have to agree these are some really crazy times.
Yeah, I mean, the last few years, Ryan Lochte went through what he did.
Right, that's where it all started.
Oh, that's interesting. So you as a personality, you as a brand, how do you network? How do you create new relationships with people, knowing that so many people come up to you and like, oh my God, Blaine, I see you on TV. Oh my God, oh my God.
Here's the funny part, and you probably know this about me. I am ridiculously introverted and timid if I don't really know you. I am painfully shy. And so I struggle with that. I don't know the answer because I shy away from making new relationships or friendships or just, meeting people. And I'm not a jerk. It's just I'm nice to people. I don't know how to do that. If you can teach me how to do that, let me know because that's probably number one on my list of things that I suck at is interacting with people that way.
Very interesting. What's something that you want to do in life but haven't done?
I would like to run a marathon.
Have you run a half?
The most I've run was a 10-miler. So almost a half.
I mean, are you training or anything for it?
No, dear God, no. I eat my feelings. So no, there's no training.
So something that you want to do, but you're not even training. You're not even training for it. Like,
oh, you'd have a field day with me because there are lots of things that I want to do. I'm a dreamer, and it's very rare for me to put those dreams to find a plan to put it into action. I'm sure I could accomplish 90% of the things I want to do in the next 5 years if I just got off my ass and did it.
Do you ever think about leaving TV?
I thought about it quite a bit. When I first got here, I think right around the time you and I worked together, not because of you, I was interviewing anywhere I could, like PR jobs, anything just to get out because I was that miserable. It got better and I stayed, obviously. I've often thought about what I would do if I didn't do the TV news every morning.
I think that's because most people, I've learned this, is that most people don't know what to do. They feel trapped. Like that's the only thing they can do is TV.
Right.
And so they don't know what else they could do.
How do these skills translate to something else? I mean, I don't know. And so you feel paralyzed that you can do like public relations. Well, geez, that sounds exciting. Like that's the last thing I would want to do. No offense to the fine people who do PR work, but that just doesn't seem exciting for me to sit at a desk from 9 to 5 and, send out emails and make cold calls to pitch stories. It's not my thing. I know this, I've always wanted to go into the world of interior design. I realize that's the most stereotypical answer I could ever give, but that's just something that's always fascinated me. I would love to be able to just like design a home, something like that. So if I didn't do TV and I could hone my skills on something like that, yeah, I'd be all about that.
So are we gonna get like a look inside Blaine Stewart's crib? Like, are we gonna do like a walk around, and be like, ooh, here we go?
Back cribs, yeah. There's not much in here right now.
There's an Atlanta poster, and then another Atlanta poster. Then there's some.
I'm a big fan of Atlanta. I was born in New Orleans, but Atlanta has my heart.
Atlanta's a great town. It's a fun place.
I love it because it is a huge city. It is a world-level city that has everything you could possibly want, yet it has Southern charm. It's welcoming. It's not cold, and that's what I love about it.
I also, for the first time, realized how much sweet tea is drank there when I went to a Chick-fil-A. There was like a 50-gallon tub of sweet tea and then like a little coffee mug of unsweet tea.
But it's funny because I cannot stand sweet tea. I just don't drink it. It's disgusting to me. And so when I visit Atlanta or places in the South and I ask for an unsweet tea, they look at me like I am some sort of traitor. Can't deal with sweet tea. It's nasty.
Oh, you're so funny. What's your favorite food?
Anything Italian.
What's your favorite restaurant in town then?
My favorite restaurant in town, by this time this airs, will have closed, Stove in Portsmouth, which is an amazing place.
Is that Italian?
No, it's sort of like neo-Southern.
So what's your second then? Or your new favorite? What will it be?
That's tough. What's my second favorite restaurant in town? I gotta think about that. I don't know.
An opportunity for someone to win. Do you feel like because of the position that you're in, it's hard for you to talk about specific businesses or review them maybe on like a Yelp or a Facebook and give them some sort of feedback because you have maybe more sway than others?
I can give you a real life instance of why, yes, it is very difficult. So about 3 years ago, I ordered a couch from a company on the internet. This couch right here, as a matter of fact, it's a lovely couch. So it was promised to be delivered by, I don't know, let's just say May 1st. And so the day before, I sold my old couch because, hey, the new couch is coming tomorrow. The morning of May 1st, they called and said, oh, apparently it never came in. It's on back order. It's going to be another month before we get your couch. So here I am now sitting on, folding chairs for a month. I had friends over or whatever. So I was a little not happy about that. And I went to Twitter and at this company, hey, wanted to show you a picture of my awesome new couch that my friends are going to enjoy tonight. And it was a picture of an empty living room. Not happy with your service. That's what I said. National company. Their local office.
Well, who's the company? Because, we can clearly go find the tweet.
I know it has been deleted by order of the bosses who are no longer with my station. But
okay.
That's what I'm getting to. The local folks did not like that, that I rightfully called them out on a customer service issue, and threatened to pull advertising from my place of employment, which means I get in hot water, even though I will say to this day, I don't think I did anything wrong. So it was pulled, an apology on my behalf was issued or whatever. And the lesson that was taught to me was, you have a lot of pull. When you speak, people listen. So your voice matters and how you use it matters. So when Joe Blow complains to a furniture company, it's Joe Blow. When the guy on the news who has the highest share in the market complains in the news, people take notice, and that could have ramifications. Like when, I forget who it was, some popular person said they weren't going to use Snapchat anymore, and their stock dropped $1 billion. Rihanna. She is, in fact, a famous person, yeah. Obviously not on that level, but words mean things, and I have to sometimes remember that I don't have the same ability to voice concerns that other people who are not in the spotlight do, because my words, for better or worse, have impact.
Must be a good feeling.
I finally got the couch, though.
Anything I haven't talked about that you want to talk about? Anything?
I will say this. You have inspired me to get up off my ass and get my website.
And that's how we'll leave it, my friends. Blaine Stewart. We're gonna make sure you get this website done. So check it out at blainestewart.com. And if it still says blah, then you know he didn't do it. But if it says blainestewart.com and it's got that shiny mug, you know that the politician in him has released the website. All right. Many of you guys know that I've worked with thousands and thousands of startups, early stage businesses, and mature businesses. And one of the questions that I get all the time, and I'm getting a lot right now, is I need a website or graphic design work, but I really don't know who to turn to. And here's the answer. Archphor. ARCPHOR. It's a hard one to spell, so I'll have it in the show notes so you guys can find it. But like me, Archphor is a company that has worked with hundreds of businesses, entrepreneurs, and startups, and they get it. So many people will say one thing, they're really just trying to take your money, your hard-earned money, and then you're unhappy. That's not what you're going to get with Archphor. It's a company that they really do truly get it, and they know how to take care of their clients, and they aren't in the business of just selling you the things that you don't need. They'll tell you, hey, this is not going to be smart. You're going to waste your money, and then you don't have to spend as much money on something like that. So it's a great company. And they are in the business of making you look great, providing you with the tools that you need to generate revenue and sales for the long haul. It's who I trust to manage my websites, and you should too. So if you're looking for graphic design work or web development, Archphor is the place to turn. Head to Archphor. I don't want to spell it again, but you guys can find that in the show notes. But archphor.com and use Zach, Z-A-C-K,
for 10% off. Just mention my name, but you have to spell it right, because if you spell it wrong, you're going to have to pay 10% more. All right, back to the show.